Morgan, are you back in the house? Is this what I'm seeing? I'm seeing that you're back. You're back in
I
this space.
I am back, y'all. Thank you for being patient with me. I needed to take a little hiatus for a second, so thank you.
I'm so happy to be here with you. I had to actually save this topic. I initially wanted to talk about this last week, but
Mhm.
if any of you weren't with me, because I did a solo episode last week, we are going to refer to that a little bit today. We want you to make sure that you go back and see that. But before we get started, let me just let her introduce herself to you because you didn't see her last week.
I'm sorry. I felt so bad. You guys, I am Morgan Bustos. I am an EFT practitioner, a life coach, and also a public speaker. I also have the privilege of being able to help women learn how to navigate through the backside of what it looks like coming out of domestic violence. We get to work one on one with them at the shelters and throughout the community, and it's really a blessing. So, thank you for allowing me to be here with you today, Chateau, and be back. It's nice to be here.
Welcome to Getting Tech. All right. Can't be here or we have to make a change. I always like to talk about the fact that that is also a part of navigating midlife. Things come up, there's a lot of changes, and you need to figure out how to navigate those and do it with grace. Not just so much grace for people on the outside, but grace for yourself. That apology, being around people that understand that everything that you used to be able to do and stack up isn't necessarily going to work anymore. And last week, that's what we were talking about. So make sure you take a peek at last week's episode. Just so that you know who I am Chateau Morrison. I am the host of this podcast. I am also known as the Princess of Positivity. And that's because I believe that you can release your negativity so your positivity can reign in your brain, in your business, in your big, beautiful life. And I am all those things that Morgan said: public speaker, author, life coach, confidence coach, self talk expert, EFT practitioner. But more than anything, I love coming to this house to get
Mhm.
into the after every single Tuesday at 8 a.m. because this is a place where midlife women can come to talk, tap, and transform. We truly believe that there's no shelf life on your healing. You can
Mhm.
go through emotional things through your 20s, your 30s, and into your 40s, and you can still have respite every single week. So do not miss an episode. So today we're going to be talking about three things that women tend to carry around in midlife. Those like three stressors that are kind of, on you. And we're going to give you some gentle somatic exercises or somatic strategies to help you navigate. Because one thing we both know for sure, right, is that without strategies, you're stuck. I'm saying
Mhm.
without strategies, just I think this season not being spring, but just this time frame with all that's going on in the world, there's a lot of stressors that women are undergoing. And I shouldn't say it's just women, people in general are, but of course we talk to midlife women.
Mhm.
It's not just one major event. Maybe you can chime in and tell me how you feel, but I think it's a steady accumulation of responsibility, emotions, expectations, changes in the body, going through all these things without a pause. And again, last week we talked about this. How do you start to build in and what do you do when all your tabs are open, right? Um, I think there's something really important about not trying to fix everything all at once. We are going to talk about three particular things that kind of show up every single day, but
Mhm.
it really has to do about noticing what is going on in your body. And I mean, talk to us a little about last week for you. What was it that made you say, you know what, I can't do this right now. This is not going to work for me today.
Being honest with myself and knowing that I wasn't in a place, like physically or mentally to be able to show up the way I knew I needed to be to support everybody else in the community. And so just taking that moment for myself to acknowledge that it's okay. It's okay to just say, hold up, like let me give you a better version of myself next week, let me.
Oh, I like that. A better version. I don't want to say better. I would like to say best because you know what? The idea of better makes it seem like one is, you know what I mean? Like there's stages. I really think that when we show up whole, it's our best version.
Mm.
Best, I think, has levels. My best today may not be what my best would have been this day last year,
Yeah, that's true.
but it's my best right now. And I
Mhm.
think that then, there's all these framings around living your best life and all that. And it almost feels like pressure. Let me just right now digress and say, make sure you get the spring magazine because we talk about that, how these pressures come on and you feel like you have
Yeah.
to do certain things. It's not cute, right?
Mhm.
So this idea of what is better, what's best, what does that look like? I think when you are able to know it's time to close a window, close a box, close down a little bit and take care of yourself so that you can show up as your best self, that is very powerful. And I think that some of the stressors that we undergo right now are because we don't feel that we're able to do that. We feel like that's a no no.
Well, we constantly talk about how important it is to have self-care and take care of ourselves, so we have to practice what we're preaching, right?
Yeah. Well, self care, don't get me started on self care because self care has become this, it's just a moment. It's Instagrammable.
Mhm.
It's for the gram. One of my girlfriends invited me to do something. I think it's in May, and we're going to
Mhm.
go to this. It's local. I've never been there before, and they're going to do like this. You're in a pool, and you get this float or something, and then there's like a sound bath thing going on, and it's going to be like with this kind of music, and they have like it's a whole experience, right?
Uh-huh.
And I promise you that maybe I'll take a picture of her when we're done. But it's everything that's done is not for
Yeah.
marketing. It's not for branding. And I think that one of the general strategies you'll never hear us say is when you're doing the strategy, take a picture of it. Now we might. This is what we
This is
do.
what
We're
we
always
do.
thinking. But when it's really for me, when it's
Yeah,
for my moment, mm-mm, it's
because
not.
you can't really enjoy it if you're doing that. Like,
Yeah,
you have to disconnect for that second to be able to take the picture, so you're
yeah,
not really embracing everything that your body's feeling and paying attention to it and hearing it
yeah,
resonate throughout your whole
yeah.
self.
You're not in it. So let's jump into these. So I picked out three, and I picked out two. I know you have one that you're going to talk about, and I love this because these are the kind of things that are so simple, but
Mhm.
and they're right at our fingertips all the time. But for some reason, they don't get done. They're right
Mm,
at the fingertips, but we forget to do them. So the first one I think has really does touch on last week, but it really has to do with our mental load and decision fatigue. Morgan, I remember the first time that I heard the term decision fatigue, and I
mm.
thought, how did I not know that's what that was? Because that's what I've been dealing with,
This whole time.
this entire time. And it was actually one of my coaches who mentioned decision fatigue. I always used to think about how many thoughts we have every single day and what are
Mm,
my automatic, thoughts. And, there's the thing called ants, right? Automatic negative thoughts. And I used to think about it from that standpoint, knowing we have 60, 70,000 thoughts a day. But this idea of mental load and decision fatigue is how many micro decisions we actually are making. And I'm not going to diss the phone again. We talked about it last week, but the phone adds to that
yeah.
because every time you open a window, every time you swipe, every reel you look at, your brain goes, do we want to look at this? Do we care what this says? Ooh, did this judge us? What happened here? Is this something we should buy? Should we click further? And it's
Mhm.
like a million little decisions every time you just swipe. It's mental load. And so this also, of course, comes down to what are we tracking, as women?
Yeah.
How many schedules? In my family, we are Apple House up in here, right? But because of that, we share everybody's calendar. So I'm going to see when my son goes to work. I'm going to see when my mother-in-law goes to the doctor. I no longer
Mhm.
see my daughter's schedule, but I'm going to see my husband's schedule. Many times it's 15 times an hour when he's updating his calendar, all of his work appointments. I want to
Mhm.
see that later, but I don't necessarily want all those notifications in that moment. And so, as I talked about last week, I talked about, going on Do Not Disturb and things like that. I hate to do that for my husband. Sometimes to tell him, love, I'm putting you on D&D. Love you. Mean it. But you're on
Yeah.
D&D right now. Okay. Because I can't handle whatever you're doing to your calendar. So,
Yeah.
because we have all these multiple roles that are managing at the same time, even little decisions start to feel bigger than what they really are. Have you felt that? I know with having two kids and also being a single mom, how does that work out for you?
Oh, it can be overwhelming sometimes because it's just trying to manage so many different things simultaneously. So you don't know where to focus your attention.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, what fire do I put out first, kind of thing. But there's 17 fires and they're all surrounding you. Yeah, exactly, just like that.
Yeah.
It's definitely, I think, an issue for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that I noticed is that even little tiny decisions, and I talked about this last week. Do you notice the hint? Go back to last week's podcast. It was called "When You Feel Fried by Four." All right, because sometimes, and look, I could have said one, 12, right? It depends on when you start your day.
Yeah.
Um, what it can feel like is that the mind feels like it continues even when the body is tired.
Mhm.
So, especially in midlife, this is that idea of I can't sleep. The mind is continually going. You're making lists. Talk to me.
Yeah, no, I was just like being in bed last night, my brain wouldn't shut down. I am exhausted. My body like fell into the bed after my shower, like drool and everything, but my brain is still like going and
Yeah,
going and going. It
it's
won't stop.
fine. It's just like, what else? What else? What else? What? So we have that difficulty relaxing.
Mhm.
We have the sense that mentally we're full before the day is even over. Like I don't have anything left to give, and I know that we have so many people that we talk to, and they say that I just feel like I don't have anything left to give. And I
Mhm.
don't know if that was, a generation ago, if that was something that women said all the time. I don't have anything left to give. But I think we're giving so much, and I'm not talking about the regular things. We're giving our attention to smaller things that become big because there's all these little things taking our attention away from when we're doing in the moment. I don't mind saying, for example, that this morning you kill me with these faces you make when I'm talking.
That's because you always have such amazing points. I'm just like, oh, boom, boom, boom. Sorry, I'm sorry. I'll try to have my face use an inside voice. I'm sorry.
Your inside voice in that face. Be yourself, mama. Um, Even this morning. So Morgan and I about to tape the podcast this morning, and everything's perfect. Everything's going well. I'm still in my alternative office. Eventually, I'll be back to the pink room. We hope sometime this spring. So I was setting everything up here. This is my husband's space. I was setting everything up. Everything's doing great. It's spring, so I want to come with the Kelly green. Right? And then I look, and I have gotten foundation. I have no idea how I did that. And it wasn't like splattered. It was like peace, peace, peace. And I said, "Are you kidding me right now? I don't want to
Yeah.
have to change the whole outfit. I'm like all greened up today. Check the ring
Mhm.
out. Is that cute?" And so it was micellar water and facial soap, the soap that I use for my face that got the
Mhm.
makeup out. Just saying, micellar water. I happen to use the Mary Kay brand. I don't know what you use, but
Yeah.
it works. It works miracles. So this, I in that moment, I'm like, now I got to stop. That became urgent. Everything
Mhm.
else, nothing mattered. Everything else was closed, and that became an urgent thing I had to take care of. But sometimes we have 4 or 5 of those an hour. So by the time that we give our attention to all those, by the end of a day, it's the body say, the brain saying, "Oh, oh, oh, now you want me to be quiet. Oh,
Mhm.
oh, you want me to be quiet now? When do we practice that all day?
Mhm.
Never." And so the brain doesn't know how to do that. So we really have this is a grounding thought for you. The body often isn't given a signal to settle down. It's not giving the signal to the brain to settle down. And we do have control over that in many ways. We have control over what we can do somatically to help trigger that. So just
Mhm.
like we have triggers that make us right?
Mhm.
We can physically give ourselves triggers that now it's time to relax. And many times these are very natural, Morgan. They're not we do it. Like we've talked about that. Sometimes when you're talking to someone and you just find yourself rubbing your shoulder, or when you're really, really stressed and you kind of in this position and you're rubbing your temple.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, those are actually somatic things that signal to your brain, your body, your mind to relax. They
Mhm.
happen naturally. It's just we were created with them, right? Sometimes we feel, or people will tell us, don't do that. That's a tell, you know? And so we've learned to quiet natural resources that we have to calm ourselves down.
At what point do you think people decided it was a good idea to ignore ourselves? Like your body is naturally telling you, I'm not okay. I don't feel safe, or I'm tired, or I don't feel well, or this upset me, or I'm frustrated. But ignore all of that and
Yeah.
still act like everything's okay.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I think men don't. So I'm just leave it like that, right? So it is taught. It's taught.
Yeah.
It's taught because it seems as if we do those things, we're not strong.
Mm,
or if we do that, we're giving away that we have. And I mean, certain times it's not the time, you know. When I'm
mhm.
in front of a room and I'm about to speak, I don't want the people to feel my nerves, or I don't want them to think what's going on in my head sometimes. Is my
Mm.
shirt right? Is my cleavage showing? Look, is my cleavage showing? It's like, those things, you don't want to give that away, and you can give it away in your face when you're like, so you are taught how to control those things in the moment, but it's not something that needs to go on forever. It's not something you need to do when you're in your bed at night. So when
Mm.
you need to release, relax, right? Like Whitley back in Different World, we're going to do some of that today. One of the things that is one of my favorite ones to do, and I actually do this probably all day long, and I do it in bed, and we do it here with you. So if you've been with us before, you might recognize this one, and it really is a quick somatic reset, and it's using your shoulders.
Mhm.
So many times the reason why you have tension in the neck, someone touches your neck, now like, "Dad, girl, that taste feel like a brick up in there," right? Is because our shoulders are not where they shoulders belong down here. So right now, if you're watching us, I would like you to kind of touch your shoulders. If this is uncomfortable for you, just do one, right? So if you can't do this, if you're stiff, but like, see, where are your shoulders? I'd like you to do this. Take your thumb on your shoulder and see how far your shoulder is from your earlobe, right? Can you touch your earlobe? Because see, sometimes it's so close up, you're like, oh, my earlobe was already touching, right?
Okay.
Bring them down. Bring them down. Bring your shoulders down.
Mhm.
Physically bring them down. And sometimes what that means is you have to roll your neck
Mm.
from side to side.
Yeah,
It's a funny thing that when we're stressed out or if our neck is bothering us, we will automatically do this. Nothing wrong with it.
that's
Like,
true.
do it. It's
Yeah.
natural. It's natural, right? And of course, Morgan and I are trained in a lot of somatic releases, so it's something we do all the time. But there are times when we remind each other even. So, who in your network, who in your environment notices when your shoulder is up to your earlobe? Do you have anyone that's helping to remind you
Hmm.
that you're looking a little stressed, right? Like, I'm that girl in everyone's life.
Yeah.
I walk up to people, I'm like, hey, babe, you
I
know,
did it.
right now.
Yeah,
Listen, I
yeah.
do my kids, I do, and with my husband, it's really hard because his shoulders are so tall. His shoulders are way up there. Sometimes I can't tell if they're up. I'm like, sit down, baby, and bring them down. So let's do that real quick. So now that you've kind of measured, we've kind of physically brought it down. Let's just do some gentle shoulder rolls. So this is one way that you can kind of trigger to your body, we need to relax right now. We need to just kind of release some of the stress that's going on, these decisions that we have, because this is all going on in this part of our body, our head and everything. So what you're
Mhm.
going to do is you're going to take, if whether your shoulders are up or not, you're going to raise them, but not just lift them, like raise them and squeeze them, right? So you can see how you can't really see my neck. Then roll them back. Don't move your body, just roll the shoulders back and then down. I forgot to tell you to breathe. I hope you breathe there. Right, so let's do it again. So you're gonna take a deep breath in, bring them up, breathe out, bring them up and back around and down. Do you feel something in your body when you do that? Talk to me, Morgan.
Well, I what I like to do is when I'm breathing out to really squeeze my shoulder blades
Yes,
together because that tension when you're breathing out and you finally release it, it softens up your whole back completely.
everything.
Mhm.
And for me, what happens is that if I think about in that moment, I'm not fixing anything. I'm just releasing. I'm
Yeah.
allowing my body to soften lightly. It's not hard work or anything. And in this moment, I'm going to allow the mental noise to kind of silence a little bit. It's
Mm.
just a couple of moments. It's a couple of moments. And if you have a big meeting coming up, if
Mhm.
you're even going, say for example, you're in with your doctor, this is something I will do. Listen, me and my doctor. As a girlfriend, hold on one second. Let me just, before you tell me that, let me just, they just probably hate that they even went to medical school when they see me coming, but because I just do not give them a break. But try that, right? And as
Mhm.
Morgan said, I didn't mention that, but when you squeeze those shoulder blades together in the back, what happens is that there's this release up front. And so many times, especially those of us who are in more modest corporate situations, we are constantly doing this because we're trying, like, for example, right, with my shirt today, right, we're constantly trying to cover, we are looking, right, at how we look. And so you automatically are bringing yourself together. So
Mhm.
you're not helping it at all. Your body starts to think that's how it looks. That's how it's supposed to feel. We want you to really start thinking about this somatic move to
Mhm.
reset. It is micro. It takes a moment. We made it be a long time, but y'all, it's just a couple of seconds. All
Well,
right. So obviously that took a lot longer than what it would normally be. We really want to bring you through it. Morgan is now going to talk about one of the this one. I'm gonna just let you go on this one more because we're gonna talk about emotions here. So give it to us.
okay, so right now we're going to talk about some emotional buildup. We have that all that like stagnant emotion in our body, in our shoulders, our chest, our stomachs, wherever you may be holding it in your hips. It's all sitting there under the surface, and a lot of times it's because we haven't expressed ourselves. We haven't expressed ourselves openly, honestly, and freely. And it yeah, and it's not that because it's not important. It's just that sometimes we may not have had the opportunity to be in like in that space
Yeah.
emotionally to be able to handle a situation. Because
Or
sometimes,
fear sometimes.
oh yeah, yeah, because you might be afraid of how somebody's going to respond to something. So we have to take a step back for a minute. But then it seems like when we do that, you don't have the same emotion. You don't have the same weight in the conversation because it's not getting handled immediately. Like
Yeah.
putting it off can sometimes be more detrimental than addressing it right then and there. Sometimes we can find that that strong emotion is needed, and if we delay it or skip out, you know what I mean? It doesn't have the same weight that we really need to have in that moment. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like reactions get managed in real time. When we do that, it is super healthy and helpful for ourselves.
Yeah. So the emotional buildup then it has to do with um I guess it's like the kitchen counter.
Yep.
You know, the kitchen counter, a lot of time, I mean, I've seen people, they only wipe it in the night. I mean,
Mhm,
they only in the evening. But
mhm,
a lot of meals have happened on the kitchen counter
mhm,
before 10 o'clock at night. And so so things don't become sticky,
mhm.
stagnant, so that you don't have coffee rings on top of like oil rings, on top of, Cheerios, on top, you know what I mean? On top of spilt milk.
Yeah.
It's that buildup. And that's the same thing with us emotionally. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, because over time, unprocessed emotions, they don't just disappear. They tend to settle into your body and then they stay there and become stagnant. So then it shows up as like tension or stress or fatigue. It can show up as irritability, being really, really, really emotionally raw sometimes, or even feeling disconnected from everything in your body and not even knowing why.
And I think midlife women in particular, I mean, I'm sorry. Let me give a shout out to the midlife women and the midlife plus. We have reason to be irritated. So we don't want to make you think that you're supposed to always walk around not
Oh.
irritated. That is unrealistic and unfair. All right. So if you're feeling a little irritated, give that space. So the
Mhm.
emotional buildup, I think what you're saying, Morgan, is that there's nothing wrong with the emotion. The not processing, the not speaking up, the not
Mhm.
really giving the emotions room is the problem.
Absolutely. So not addressing in the exact situation, the emotion that is addressing the situation,
Yeah.
like burying it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what can we do?
So one of the somatic releases we can do too is inhaling slowly through our nose, right? So you're taking that deep breath in and just letting your body fill up. That feels wonderful when you're releasing and blowing it out with a long, steady exhale, right? So you're breathing in and then breathing out. And just let your body feel the breath. It's important not to force it, but just notice what's present. You're not trying to define anything. You're not trying to understand what's going on in your body. Just really be connected to where you are with that breath. Also recognizing that if something is there, that's enough. You don't have to address it. You don't have to dig deep. Just address what's right there. And then when something is acknowledged, it does begin to shift with your body. So if you are in a safe place and you're able to say, okay, when I took this breath in, I felt it here. This
Yeah.
is the feeling and emotion attached to it. Okay. If I feel safe, I can address it. And if not, it doesn't need to be solved right here, right this second.
And
Like,
this is a good place for this.
oh my goodness, yes, always have mine right here.
So what you're
Just
talking about right there is perfect. You may
yeah,
not have time. I mean, I carry mine with me.
yes.
Mine is in my canvas tote all the time. All right. There are times when I can't use it, then I'll jot it down. I'll put it on my phone. But
Mm,
the reason why we ask you to get one of these is because it's specific for your tapping. And
mm.
when you come again, what she was when Morgan's talking about, you feel something someplace, something like that trigger hits you, write it down because that's how you're going to tap.
What I love about carrying this with me too is that I can go back, right? I can go back and I can look over and say, okay, I'm feeling this again. Did I ever experience this previously? And then see if there's a pattern. And then that way it helps me like kind of logically be able to move to the next thing, say, okay, this was happening in my day when this
Yeah.
happened. Did that happen again here? So is this a trigger for me? Okay, this is a trigger. So how can I make sure to be able to regulate my emotions
Yeah.
when this does come up again?
Or avoid certain situations, which there's nothing wrong with. I mean, I think sometimes we don't give ourselves the room to say, every time I'm with this person, or every time I'm in this place, or
Mm,
every time, this situation happens, this scenario, I feel this way. We can't always change our environment. We can't always change our circumstances, but we can change how we go into them.
mm.
So if you know that, and I think, oh, this is in the magazine. This is in the spring magazine. I said, where did I hear? Oh, I heard it because I wrote it. It's in the spring magazine that what happens is there are so many circumstances that we can't control. And by your 40s and 50s, you know that. But then you just
Mhm.
gonna barrel through, barrel through. No, not good for the nervous system. Okay.
No.
What you do is instead is you pause before the situation. You've
Mhm.
learned enough. You have enough wisdom to say, this is my nervous system, my beautiful, wonderful nervous system. Am I going to support it or am I going to abandon her?
And ignore it. Like, when we ignore ourselves, that's when the most detriment happens. It's the most detrimental to ourselves because you like you said, going into a situation, you're like, I don't feel safe around this person, or this person makes me irritated or not the best version of myself. Stay away from it.
Yeah,
Don't force yourself to be in situations you don't feel comfortable in.
yeah. And the thing is, you may have a lot of those situations in a day. So that's
Mhm,
why I talk about, so there's two strategies: stay away or navigate. Navigate many times means that something's come up really quickly and you
mhm,
can't get out, right? So, but how are you going in? How are
mhm,
you going in? And sometimes when I say going in, how are you starting your day? We're not going to get into all of that today, but think about that. And again, look at the patterns. You can get your own at bit.ly/G2A-journal. You can also go out to our website, getintoafter.com, and go to the resources page, and you can get one of these. It's only $10. They're really great. And all of the tapping points are inside of it as well. And it
mhm,
helps you because you can see the pattern over time. What happens to me during this particular moment? How do
mhm,
I react? Am I reacting the way that, as my best self? You'll be able to see the patterns and be able to make some changes.
mhm,
All right, so we're going to get into stressor number 3. So we've got this idea of kind of mental overload, decision fatigue. We're talking about emotional buildup, and you can see how they kind of go in order, right? So you start
mhm,
to make all the decisions, and you're kind of avoiding them or whatever. Now you have this emotional buildup because you haven't dealt with things, and the body is responding. So we have that shoulder, right? So you want to kind of know where our shoulders are because our shoulders are often holding that tension. Tension's
mhm,
held in other parts of the body, but a lot of times the shoulders are holding that tension.
mhm,
And then the breath. And Morgan, you didn't mention this, but a lot of times we hold our breath in situations. That's a natural response because we're trying to, that's,
Like,
but
yeah,
the body is trying to be like, I'm not happy here. So we're not breathing, right?
yeah.
And so you have to notice that too. Are you holding your breath? And if you find yourself doing that, we want to slow the breath down. We do not want to raise our blood pressure just because we're in certain situations. The stressor number three is one I think we don't often talk about that much, even here, and that's the disconnection from ourselves. But I did mention a moment ago about self abandonment, right? And so a lot of times what happens, we're kind of moving through our day, we're just doing everything. It's just very automatic, it's autopilot, with no internal connection to how we're feeling. And if you can imagine how, if you do not have a connection to your body or your mind or your emotions, that you don't feel present. And I really feel, Morgan, that not feeling present is one of the, it's so funny. You'll look on social media and things, it'll say, be present. Sometimes people do not even know what that means. And if you've lived on autopilot, either from people being around you that are narcissistic, abusive, unkind, I'm not talking about spouses, husbands, families, moms, right? Children. What
Mhm.
happens is that you're like, I have to get through. I've got to get to 4 o'clock. I've got to get to 8 o'clock. I've got to get to bedtime.
Yeah.
One of the things, again, I would really recommend journaling on that, but also make sure you come here at least once a week. You can kind of let your guard down, right?
Mhm.
You want to try to have some moments of personal check in throughout the day,
Mm.
just check ins. Morgan, when I started doing that years ago, just kind of checking, and I'm not perfect at this
Mhm.
because we are busy women and you can forget to do that. What happens is that when you have that little sense of feeling off, sometimes we fill it with other things. Go
Yeah.
back to last week's podcast. We
Yeah.
fill it with food. It feels like hunger. It feels like tired, so we go get a cup of coffee. It feels like I'm bored, so we pick up our phone and we check, TikTok or the gram or Facebook or whatever yours is of choice, Lemonade, whatever it is. Um, we'll turn on the TV, even music, which I think is really great somatically, but what is it covering? Because even music can be a disconnection if you don't know why you immediately had that automatic, let me go do this. So nothing wrong with the coffee, nothing wrong with the snack, nothing wrong with, but having the sense of why am I going to this, right? Um, it really comes down to doing what needs to be done so that what we do is we do everything that needs to be done, even though we don't feel like ourselves, even though we feel off. And that's why I appreciate Morgan last week. She could have pushed through. She was like,
Mm.
can we tape another day? Can we? And I was just like, you know what? You don't sound like yourself. And she's like, I'm not. Okay, bet. We don't, we want to show up for you guys. Like we're showing up for you. And remembering again that every time, I mean, granted, we have jobs, we have responsibilities, and we have to show up. We do, as women, we do. We don't have a choice. But that disconnection, even knowing I don't feel like myself today, and we've talked about that here. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging that. Writing that down that today was not a good day. And if it's not here because you don't have this, put it in your planner, put it on your phone, put it in your calendar so that you can see a pattern. Sometimes even it could be something physical. It could be hormonal. When you go to your doctor and they say, well, how have you been the last 6 months or 12 months? And you can't answer them. There's been a series of disconnected time frames. You've been not connected to yourself. You're moving through the motions. It's a huge stressor for midlife women. You got to check in during the day.
Mhm.
One of the things you can just literally ask yourself is, how am I feeling? You don't say, how are you feeling? You literally stop for a moment. You can put 3 minutes on your phone, 3 minute timer, 2 minute timer. Ask yourself, how am I feeling? Nothing comes up. Ask yourself again, how am I feeling? So many times I've talked to women who I've asked to do this and they immediately start crying.
Mhm.
They start not sobbing, tearing up. So for those of you listening, whether you're listening live or you're listening in the replay, just ask yourself for a moment, how am I feeling? Has today been a good day so far? See how, even for me, immediately took a deep breath.
Mm-mm.
Immediately, that's what happens. That's called natural somatics. It happens automatically. When you give yourself that little bit of space, your body goes, ooh, and your body wants to take a deep breath and release.
But so many people don't want to address that. That they don't want to give themselves that time to be able to acknowledge what is their reality is, that there
You
is
know,
something.
Morgan, is it that they don't want to give themselves time, or they haven't been taught? Or, you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know if people just are walking around saying, yeah, I want to feel like crap. I don't
Well,
think,
I don't mean it like that. I think, like, there's knowing that there's still, like, so much we have to do
yeah,
past that emotion. So if I stop and I actually acknowledge what I'm feeling, like, even in that what was that, 5 seconds after we said, "How am I feeling?" Like, my little eyes started tearing up a little bit because I was still enough to listen to myself and my feelings and emotion and acknowledge what I was going through.
yeah.
It it's
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 deep.
so important. It's so important because we constantly fill it with everything else because we feel like we have to keep going.
And here's my thing. I want to be realistic. We do have to keep going.
Mhm.
However, if we build in micro moments, and we're going to do a tapping in just a couple of seconds. If we build in these little micro moments, doing your shoulders, right? Paying attention to your breath, giving yourself a minute to ask, how am I doing? How am I feeling? You will immediately exhale. So even if you give yourself, okay, 30 seconds, maybe you don't have time to put it in the journal. Okay. What if you give yourself 30 seconds? Do you know, Morgan, this is really interesting, that if you give yourself a few seconds and you say something verbally out loud or, an undertone, right, on your
Mm,
lips, your brain will hear, oh, we're acknowledging that feeling. Okay. And it will give you some chemicals to help you.
mhm.
So many times we're not allowing our body to do what it's going to do naturally. We're created like this.
Yeah,
We're in a chaotic mess in this world right now. We need to work along with this vessel that will do the work for us if we give it the time. And that's why I love tapping, because we're meant to touch these points on our body, but who even knows that they're there? Get the Spring magazine. Just saying. Get the Spring magazine. There's a really beautiful article in there. Morgan and I are giving it up to you. We're giving it up. Okay.
mhm.
Don't miss it. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start. Morgan, go ahead and give them the karate chop point. That's where we're going to do what's called a setup phrase. And so you're going to maybe say something, if you decide to repeat after me and Morgan, that sounds a little bit weird, right? Because one of the things we're taught as women is always to, kind of hide our feelings and not acknowledge them. And it even becomes embarrassing to say things out loud that are negative, or that might be considered self deprecating, but they exist. So we're going to say them today. Even though I've been carrying a lot lately,
Even though I've been carrying a lot lately,
and I haven't always had the space to slow down and process,
and I haven't always had the space to slow down and process,
and I don't feel really good about that.
and I really don't feel good about that.
I am choosing to begin to support myself right now.
I am choosing to begin to support myself right now,
Even though my mind feels a little out of control and overwhelmed,
even though my mind feels a little out of control and overwhelmed,
and my body is holding on to the tension,
and my body is holding on to the tension,
and I don't always know what to do with it.
and I don't always know what to do with it.
Right now, I give myself permission to slow down and relax.
Right now, I give myself permission to slow down and relax.
Even though I move through my days without being present,
Even though I move through my days without being present,
and that makes me feel a little dishonest,
and that makes me feel a little dishonest,
especially with those I love the most.
especially with those I love the most.
I'd like them to see who I really am, but I can't.
I'd I'd like them to see who I really am, but I can't.
I give myself credit for getting done what needs to be done.
I give myself credit for getting done what needs to be done,
And I'm open to coming back to myself right now.
and I'm open to coming back to myself right now.
Beautiful. Go ahead and stop tapping for just a second. I'd like you to do a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Really important doing that breath. And we're going to go ahead and start going through these points. You're going to notice me touching certain parts of my body. I always let you know that there's a couple things that Morgan and I do differently because of our body composition. Do what feels comfortable. This is not about doing anything that feels painful for you in any way or feels uncomfortable. We want you to really be feeling just relaxing through this process. And if you can, if I say something you're like, that doesn't resonate for me, change the words up. It's okay. So we're going to go ahead and start the eyebrow point. There's a lot on my mind.
There's a lot on my mind.
Side of eye. So many things to keep up with.
So many things to keep up with.
Under eye. Doesn't always stop.
It doesn't always stop.
Under nose. Even when I want it to.
Even when I want it to.
Chin. My body keeps holding on to things.
My body keeps holding on to things.
Collarbone. There's a pressure and a tension.
There's a pressure and there's a tension.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my body.
Underarm. All the things I haven't said.
All the things I haven't said.
All the things I haven't done.
All the things I haven't done.
Top of head. All the decisions I've made.
All of the decisions I've made.
I accept them.
I accept them.
Eyebrow point. I can feel this in my body.
I can feel this in my body.
Side of eye. In my shoulders.
In my shoulders.
Under eye. Or in my chest.
Or in my chest.
Under nose. Sometimes it's a rumbling in my belly.
Sometimes it's a rumbling in my belly.
Chin. So I eat even though I'm not hungry.
So I eat even though I'm not hungry.
I release that now.
I release that now.
Collarbone. It's hard to name this feeling.
It's hard to name this feeling.
This feeling of I keep moving.
This feeling of I keep moving.
Underarm. Isn't that what a woman's supposed to do?
Isn't that what a woman's supposed to do?
Top of head. My body isn't always sure.
My body isn't always sure.
But I'm willing to give myself a moment to figure it out.
But I'm willing to give myself a moment to figure it out.
And I can figure it out.
And I can figure it out.
Good. All right, take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it at the top for a few moments. Release it all in one breath. All right. We're tapping through some deep things here, so if you're feeling anything in your body, I want you to definitely acknowledge that. Take a little water. Yeah. And now we're going to do a release round. Each time we go through these points in our body where this is called a round, this entire thing is in getting to after we call this a tapping transformation. We're going to go and release some of those things you might have felt or that came up for you. Eyebrow point. I don't have to hold on to all of this.
I don't have to hold on to all this.
Side of eye, not all at once.
Not all at once.
The decisions I've been making, I don't have to make all at once.
The decisions I've been making, I don't have to hold all at once.
Under I don't have to do it all by myself.
I don't have to do it all by myself.
Under nose, letting this move,
Letting this move,
letting this tension go.
letting this tension go.
Chin, I'm allowing it to soften. It feels good.
I'm allowing it to soften and it feels good.
I'm worthy of feeling good.
I'm worthy of feeling good.
Yeah. Collarbone, I don't have to figure everything out.
I don't have to figure everything out.
I'm worthy of checking in on myself.
I'm worthy of checking in on myself.
Underarm, I don't have to have the perfect words.
I don't have to have the perfect words.
I don't need to have a lot of time.
I don't need to have a lot of time.
Just moments are enough for now.
Just moments are enough for now.
Top of head, I allow myself the space I need
I allow the spell. I allow myself the space I need
because I am worthy
because I am worthy
and I'm enough.
and I am enough.
Okay, stop tapping. Let's take another deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth, and just repeat after me, one breath at a time,
One breath at a time.
one shoulder roll at a time,
One shoulder roll at a time.
one check in at a time.
One check-in at a time.
I'm allowed to do what I need to support myself.
I'm allowed to do what I need to support myself.
And I'm worthy.
And I'm worthy.
Beautiful.
Mm.
All right. So I have to be honest that there are so many times, yeah, that was deep, right?
Oh,
There's so many times that, I write these for our audience, Morgan. I write them for the people, the women who follow us. I want them to have a little respite, a little space, but my body was releasing like crazy through that.
yeah.
You know, it's not something that's like for some women. Sometimes we talk about things we're like, oh, I can't relate. I don't know
Mhm.
why we can't relate to this. Why don't you give us your thoughts?
I felt that tapping in every part of my body and how it was releasing. And like you said, it's for everybody else, but we really, really can feel it ourselves.
Yeah.
Like my back was cracking, my chest was opening up, but like
Wow.
releasing so much. And it just reminds me of how sometimes we don't realize how much we're holding on to until we pause and we just take that second for ourselves. And when there isn't space to release that, that feeling doesn't just go away.
Yeah.
Like, it stays quietly with us and building up over time, and that buildup can show up in so many different ways. At first, sometimes it can feel like being irritated or tired. Sometimes we feel disconnected from our friends or our relationships or even from ourselves, and you just don't feel like yourself. And so that's why this episode is so important because we're taking a notice to moment we're taking the time to notice where we're at right here, right now, and feeling that shift, within ourselves. Then with this, I think it's really neat too how this correlated perfectly with last week. Absolutely perfectly. So this conversation, if you weren't here last week, go back and listen to that. I was there in spirit, even though I wasn't there in person. But with the taping, but you can really feel how much the body is responding to it, even when you just give it a little bit of space. So just really paying attention to yourself, acknowledging where you're at, acknowledging what's going on, and just being honest with yourself and taking the time to listen. So I'm allowed to pause and notice what I feel. I'm allowed to release what I've been holding in my own time. I don't have to carry everything all at once. I can support my body with small, gentle moments. I'm learning to stay connected to myself, even in whole season.
Those are nice, Morgan. Yeah, those are really good. And I'm gonna just tell you, make sure that you get the spring magazine. In fact, I'm actually, Morgan, even though spring magazine is going to come out, I am going to still allow the winter magazine to go with that if someone gets a subscription because
Oh,
I
wow.
think, I know, I know, um, I, I know. If you get the subscription, and here's the reason why, I don't want you to miss the breathing rooms that we have. And there's some very special features in the spring magazine I haven't even told Morgan about yet. There's some additions, some little cute little additions. They're so good. Um, don't miss having this breathing workout with Morgan. Do not miss it. It is so relaxing. The one for spring is so juicy and good. It's a little bit extended time we did for spring. You don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss it. Sometimes it's hard figuring out what do I say by myself? How do I ground? What do I want to say? How do I do these affirmations so that they feel normal and real and all of that? When you do it with another person, even virtually, even just audibly, it is really powerful because you're no longer just by yourself.
Mm,
And if you think about even today, you don't need to do everything all at once. You don't, okay, I'm doing my shoulders, I'm doing breath, I'm just that. That may feel like a
yeah.
lot all at once. But if you notice that that your shoulders, maybe you just work on that one. Maybe that's one you do for the week. Every time, during the day, I'm going to just kind of touch myself and see where my shoulders are. You can do that in a meeting. You could kind of just, you can do that as you're kind of going through your day. I mean, don't walk around like this. They're gonna think you're a little odd, right? But just notice a little something, right? I'm not
Yeah.
telling you to get in the middle of your meeting, or maybe you're in a conference. We're not. We didn't tell you to do that, right? Gentle little breaths, giving yourself. Ask yourself those questions, one or two,
Mm,
starting with one breath, one movement, one question to yourself, one round of tapping, coming back to this and doing it again will help you to be more present and will allow your body to respond in a way that supports you instead of you abandoning it, because that is not what getting to after is all about.
mm,
So I really hope that this resonated with you. Make sure you tell a friend. If you would like to work with Morgan or myself as a coach, make sure you go to our link. You can go to bit.ly/chat-tap and you can schedule with either one of us, or you can always go to our website, gettingtoafter.com, to find out more information about us. And if you don't want to do any of those things, do make sure that you at least get back here next Tuesday, 8 a.m. Eastern, because we're going to be bringing you more great stuff for midlife women. All right, so we're out. Go on with your day. Have a great one. We love you. And we hope that this helped you along your day to regulate your nervous system. All right. Peace out, y'all.